Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey Mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike here. Golden Age of Cardboard podcast is what you're listening to. I hope that's what you meant to turn on, because that's what you're going to get for the next 40 to 60 minutes. We'll see how long this goes. It's always, everybody thinks, how do you plan your episodes? I don't. I get a good guest that I want to have a conversation with, and we have a conversation. And that is kind of the way my podcast world works. I have nothing but maybe a couple of notes that I keep to get ready for each episode, and really the conversation makes itself. It's really great. All the people that I have on, I consider friends. And so that makes it way easier because we already know each other to some degree. Rarely do I have someone on that I don't know at all. And we're just talking cards. So tonight I am talking to a gentleman who I've known a little while. He's a YouTuber, fellow YouTuber. He collects different though than a lot of us do. And I think it'll be an interesting perspective to hear how he collects, why he collects that way. And maybe, just maybe, you guys will go, that's a good way to collect too. Because there's so many different ways to skin the cat. There's so many different ways to build a great collection. And you got to remember, you got to build a collection for yourself. Not for anyone else, not to show off, not to anything. What do you like? And a lot of that's determined. We all like a lot of things that probably we can't afford. And so budget plays into it, right? Space plays into it. There's so many different variables that determine what our collection ends up looking like. We'd all have, high grade, Babe Ruths and Lou Gehrig's and Mickey Mantles and Hank Aaron's and all that stuff if we could, but most of us can't. And so I am excited to get John's perspective. I'm going to bring him on now, and we will start talking. John, 3D 80s kid, welcome to your premiere, appearance on Golden Age of Cardboard. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Definitely bringing a different collecting approach than what people are familiar with for you. So
yeah, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to say, I can't say that enough, that, I respect how you collect. I respect how everybody collects, really. But, and I enjoy going, wow, that's interesting take on that. And it's fun to hear the stories of why and all that. But tell me first, like, you've been collecting for a long time, relatively new to YouTube. Kind of tell me that story a little bit as best you can.
Well, I actually wouldn't say I have been collecting a long time is one of my issues. So I did, start in the 80s. Clearly, I'm an 80s kid from the title. And I stopped in around 1991. So those cards were in boxes that traveled with me from move to move to move. And I did not crack them open again really until 2021. So that is when I started collecting again. So it was from 83 to 91 really for me. And then again in 2021 with a 30-year gap. And as such, I didn't find my way to vintage even until 2022. When I came back the first year, the first thing that excited me to pick up was this card over here that was felt untouchable to me in 1991.
Little David Robinson Hoops rookie. Love that.
Yeah, the hoops rookie, the one where he's holding his jersey with the suit on, because that was the chase card. David Robinson was my favorite basketball player during the 90s, and that thing, my local card shop had one that they wanted $50 for, and there was no eBay, there was no other means of acquiring that, and that was outrageous for me to possibly spend that much on a card. So then I get on the eBay in 2021, and the wonders I find, it's I can get this card was sent to me, I believe, for $2.50.
Nice.
Raw condition. So I spent a year or slightly less than that dabbling in then collecting basketball Hall of Famers, but there just really isn't the same history and availability of cards, especially when you go back in the vintage side for the Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And so the select guys get pretty darn expensive. The 86 Fleer set gets pretty darn expensive, to try to collect rookie cards of Hall of Famers. And it just wasn't thrilling me anymore. And I ended up ultimately, watching enough YouTube and seeing folks like yourself to think, maybe I should try vintage baseball cards. And ended up selling my first card ever then, early 2022, and liquidated almost all of the basketball cards I had purchased. Fortunately, it was right before those took a dump, so I actually made slight profit, I think, on my purchases during 2021, and started pouring it back into vintage baseball cards.
So it's unusual. I mean, a lot of guys came into the hobby during COVID or post-COVID. What was your catalyst to go, I want to collect cards again?
I think ultimately, for me, it was finding something to make me happy. I was in a bit of a funk in mid-2020. To back up a little bit, my parents came to live with us in 2018 because my mom was failing health and my dad needed help taking care of her. So they were living in our house at that point. And my mom ultimately passed in July of 2020 from had a heart defect. So ultimately, and I was probably pretty depressed after that for a few months, and ended up, I guess, seeking out my childhood again. So,
not an uncommon story, not usually, the death of a loved one or some, there will be some moment or event that drives someone, let me pull those cards out again. And in COVID, it happened a lot. Guys were just bored out of their gourd and looking through their closet. Oh, there's some cards, from when I was a kid. And it's just interesting. I like hearing everyone's story because I have literally the polar opposite story of collecting in the 80s, just like you, never stopping, having periods of slowdown, right? And where I didn't have the financial means to just collect everything and buy stuff. But I think, or I guess you think of yourself, because you've said it to me, there's a distinct advantage for the guys that have collected throughout, because they were able to buy stuff 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, that if we all went back, we'd all spend, we'd empty our bank accounts to buy cards, right? Knowing
exactly
what they cost back then. One of my good friends, him well, Eric, those back pages, has an absolutely breathtaking collection. And he'll tell you it's because I bought this, 15 years ago or 20, it's not because he bought it all last week. He didn't just hit the lottery and was able to purchase all these amazing cards. It happens over time. It happens with time. You can buy a card now, and then another little bit while longer, you save up, you do whatever, you buy another card. And so the whole marathon, not a sprint thing is so true. You're in I guess, do you feel like you're in catch-up mode? Like, man, I've got to catch up to all these guys that are 10 years ahead of me, 15, 20 years ahead of me. Do you feel that way?
I mean, I felt like that a little bit when my wall was empty behind me. If anybody goes back and looks at my first YouTube video, you'll even find some of the spaces filled in this original case are filled with like Circle K cards as the placeholders for some of the vintage look to continue.
Right.
And so, you know, I did feel kind of that way in terms of, even when I started on YouTube, I didn't even have what would be 30 cards to fill up a case behind me. So, but I just wanted to kind of document my collecting story anyways and join the community. So, which, you know, anyone out there, if you're thinking about it at all, it's such an awesome thing, you know, press record and just get it out there. It's gonna feel like it's a horrible thing at first, especially if you're brave enough to put yourself directly on camera. I know we have a lot of hand models in this community. It's another whole leap to just like talk to a camera with nobody there as well. So, well,
tell me this. I got another question for you. If you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
Coming back to the hobby just a couple of years ago, what was the most surprising thing to you in terms of how the hobby had changed from 1991 to 2021?
I was amazed at how much people put into modern players. I mean, you know, at the end of my collecting, I had seen the craze for Greg Jeffries and Todd Van Poppel and, you know, a few other guys, Ben McDonald, Jerome Walton.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And, you know, they made a big deal, the old heads at that point, about, wow, you guys are nuts, wanting to spend $5 on these things. And now you got people spending thousands of dollars on unproven players.
So that shocked you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, one of the things that turned me off in 91 was even the leap from getting packs for 50 cents to everything being more than $1. So in that year, when they started making fancier looking sets to keep up with the upper decks and the Leafs.
Yeah,
so
91, Stadium Club was introduced, right? So you had this full bleed, you know, photograph picture card, right? Which were great, and we all look back at them longingly, and we love those. I love them anyway. They're not worth a lot anymore, and that's the problem. It doesn't mean you can't collect it. It's cheap. It's easy to collect it because there's tons of it out there. It's relatively inexpensive. You could go. I have like a 91 that dome set. I have like 10 of them that I just got in a collection. So they're not rare. It's just it did change back then, and it's obviously it's different for me because I saw the change gradually, right? It's like your kid, you know, if you or like a nephew or something that if you saw them every day, you wouldn't notice, but you wait 5 years, they come over, you're like, oh my gosh, you've grown so much. Well, no kidding. A lot happens over time, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that really struck me is the modern, like, PSA 10 or nothing attitude that is so pervasive. I mean, that's one of the big things that then drew me to vintage also is, you know, the cards themselves aging is part of the beauty of it even. I mean,
yeah, we don't talk about that enough, but you're totally right. They're supposed to look old, right? They are old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were supposed to be handled by kids. I mean, they were a kid's product. So
you got into vintage. What drew you? You mentioned it a little bit. You started with the basketball and then kind of divested yourself of that. you started watching YouTube. How'd you discover that there were card channels on YouTube? You just typed it in one day?
I honestly don't fully remember. I mean, when you first even start, though, you end up with the monster channels doing modern things generally. And so it actually took a while to find folks like yourself of, I'm not really happy watching this investing video or this like shouting "let's go" that the kids do.
Right.
So and
the algorithm will, once you start kind of down a road, though, once you kind of discover a couple of channels, it'll start recommending other things, and you can broaden your horizons. And then you watch people mention other channels, and hey, you should, if you like mine, you should go watch so and so. And it leads you down a path not only of great content to consume, but even for you, it was inspiration to turn the camera on yourself, right?
Oh yeah. And I did not actually have the bravery to do it until I saw you interview Vintage Sanctuary, Adam, and I ended up, learning the fact that he lived in the Portland metro area with me, and started communicating to him in the comments of all of his videos, to the point where we met up at our one monthly, kind of pathetic in terms of vintage card show that occurs in Portland.
Okay.
And met him in person. And, part of me getting over that hurdle was me telling him I'm going to start a channel. So
then you had someone to hold you accountable, right?
Exactly.
Someone to say, hey, you said you were starting a channel. How come I haven't seen anything yet? And then, that's so cool. By the way, Adam's going to be my guest next week, ironically.
Cool.
And the fact that you two met, that you saw him on the channel, you saw him on this show, actually. And he was one of those guys that literally just kind of reached out randomly and said, hey, I know you don't know me, but I have this unique perspective. Can I come on and talk about it on the show? And I'm like, okay, let's give that a shot. Now I know Adam, and I can't wait to have him back on the show. It's so cool that you guys connected, and now y'all are friends. You talk often and collect similarly and inspire each other and all of that good stuff, right?
Oh yeah, we still try to get together in person every couple months. And after meeting him, that kind of rolled into meeting others that had started on YouTube at a similar time period. And now we have a very active daily chat going on our phones with a dozen guys that are all 2022 YouTube rookies. So
that is so cool. I love that. And you find that you kind of gravitate towards guys that collect similarly to you, or what your interests are, and B, guys that are kind of in the same stage of content creation, ironically.
Yeah.
Most of my friends, my good friends, have been doing YouTube for close to a decade. And so that's just who I hang with. And that's great. Everybody needs their circle of friends, and it makes this hobby so much better, as I've said many, many times. Let's get into your unique style of collecting. And
okay.
Where did it start? Why did you decide to take this route? Like, explain how you collect that most people out there that are listening or watching this would go, okay, that's a little different. And then how you got to make the decision to go in that direction.
Well, when I first was going to buy a vintage card, I thought for a while of where do I even want to start? And my dad's favorite player, I grew up in California, in Northern California, and my dad grew up in Northern California. His favorite player was Willie Mays. He actually got the opportunity to meet Willie Mays through his job. He was a utility lineman in the Bay Area when I grew up. And Willie Mays has a really nice house in a little city called Atherton, which is on the South Peninsula of the Bay Area. And one day he was doing work on a pole in his backyard, and got to shake his hand. So
nice.
But that would have been during the 80s. But so I decided I wanted to get myself a Willie Mays card, and part of this for me was going to be showing the cards to my dad as I got them and talking about them. So initially I looked through like a trading card database where you can see the whole list of everybody's run of cards really easily and quickly, and ultimately decided that I loved the design of the 60 top set. And not only that, it was a lot friendlier from a price point for perspective than his 50s issues. So this 1960 Topps Willie Mays card was the card that started it all for me in vintage. And from there, I realized, lots of these old collectors are showing rookie cards all the time. I am coming to this post-COVID boom. I look at the price guides or charts and graphs, and rookie cards are expensive. I'm coming into this in my late 40s. I am going to be dead before I can afford to buy a collection of even the post-war rookie cards. So I made that decision then to start collecting the cards I like from sets I like. And so then that blossomed into going farther with 60 Topps initially. Collecting the Hall of Famers from that set is where that blossomed to. So like Hank Aaron's 60 Topps card. And then, as far as, it doesn't matter to me really ultimately the cost. To me the cost is the obstacle to me possessing it. Once I have it, I don't care how much it's worth because I'm not going to benefit from that. I'm getting graded cards, and I'm telling my wife if I die, take them over to Hoodies. They're a big consigner. So, and get whatever you can. That's a local thing for me here. Pretty big eBay consigner. So, a card like this, I, recently, Mr. Fisher Bike had a VR for, our favorite vintage cards. And this was my number one card because I just love the design of it. This 1960 Eddie Matthews. Love how it's got the fielding pose, the batting pose. He's looking at the camera. He's got a hat on. There's no hatless mugshot here. And then it's a 60 Topps card. So it's already a beautiful design.
And I got this team logo. You got the team logo there. Like
the old time logo.
Yeah.
I got this unopposed in an auction for $25. So, I mean, that's right up my alley. So, from there, once I finished those ones, I, wanted to get, another era of Hall of Famers. And, I'm thinking, what's a good year gap? You probably need to separate about 10 years. Because ultimately I'm trying to I'm starting a project at that point to capture as many Hall of Famers as I can, at least one card of them in a card design that I like.
Multiple sets, whatever you like.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, in the post-war, I kind of worked off of 3 major sets that I liked the best overall. And so from 60 Topps, I went to 72, like this 72 Seaver.
Okay.
His rookie cost a fortune. I got this for $16. And it's gorgeous.
Right.
So, because I decided I didn't want to just stay with post-war. I mean, as a kid, I felt like everything, even at all vintage, was unattainable. But I studied the old time guys. I read the books. I watched the documentaries. I mean, My favorite channel, I think, as a teen was probably like ESPN2 or whichever one showed all the documentaries almost nonstop.
Yeah.
So I was just big time into the history of baseball and wanted a piece of everything, and that's ultimately what I'm trying to do now. Because like this guy here, Hal Newshauser, I picked up his 55 tops here. Also unopposed. I think this one was like $20. It's 1955 tops, the beautiful yellow ones. I love those yellow ones. It's only an SGC2, but I look at this thing and I don't know how it got that grade. My close eyesight, fortunately, I think is poor at this point, so that works in my favor. I can't see the flaws even looking up close. So, they look great on my wall. And, his Leaf rookie is absolutely insane with it being a super short print. So that would have been a complete, no-go if I went down the rookie card route. And it's allowed me now to where I've reached a point in, almost 2 years of doing vintage baseball, but kind of 2.5 years of budget because of the sale of the previous year of basketball card collecting. So, I'm limiting myself to, right around only $200 a month. And I have 3 kids still at home that are teenagers. I, am pretty much the sole income of our household. My wife just started into a part-time thing, but, she was dealing with all the kids, and then she helped a lot with my parents moving in. So she just recently got back into working. So I'm just not in a place where I have enough budget to even approach going for rookie cards. And I am having a lot of fun. I think these cards look awesome. I mean, I love looking at my displays. I have the fortune to sit right here at work 4 days a week. To my left is my work computer setup. And I have these cards right by me on my wall. I can, take a break from my computer screens and stare at cardboard throughout the day.
Love it.
And, it's allowed me to get into pre-war already after only 2.5 years. Because I only have 3 people left that I'm viewing as being the post-war cards to collect. I still need a Jackie, Satchel, and I've lumped Joe DiMaggio in that route because I'm going to go for a Burke Ross. But other than that, I'm complete with post-war Hall of Famers. And now I'm 15 into pre-war. And I feel like this is now a project I can potentially still complete in my lifetime. So, the ultimate goal of owning as many Hall of Famers as I can. Of course, I'm kind of excluding the, I think it's 21 guys that are pre-T206, and I'm excluding the Negro League players that never had a baseball card because those Cuban ones are insane for a price. So, but everyone that played T206 and later, I think, is an attainable project goal for me for the rest of my collecting life. Obviously it's going to be a lot slower going with the pre-war cards than it's been for post-war, but I'm having fun with it. So
I love that you're patient, that you're not, I mean, you've done an amazing job in just a couple of years at $20 a pop, at $25 a pop, the occasional $50 card, right? That allows you to stretch your budget as best you can and maximize the amount of cards. I think people, again, it's all stuff I preach all the time, but stretching your hobby dollar as best you can, accepting mid to lower grade cards of all-time great players is never a bad strategy, in my opinion. It just makes sense, and you've been able to get probably 150 or so Hall of Famers at least, would be my guess. Based on
I think right now it's at 137.
Okay.
So
I was pretty close. That's impressive. That's the word I think of when I think about what you've done in a relatively short period of time on a relatively just a budget that you kind of have to stick to because of your circumstances, right? It's not like you can just spend $1,000 on a card whenever you want, you know?
Oh yeah. I have never earned one of these eBay folders.
The authenticity guaranteed folders.
Yes, I've had 3 cards sent to me in one, but I've never actually earned one. So
okay. So I love that you love 1960 Topps. I do too. I'm looking behind you, by the way, as I'm you're not much to look at, so I'm just looking at the cards behind you. It's okay. I'm
understood completely.
It's only because I know the feeling. I'm the same way. You got some 53 Bowman colors back there, it looks like.
Yes, that was the 3rd set that I dove into a bit in terms of the post-war. I fell in love with this one right here. The Roy Campanella card was love at first sight on this card.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
I saw this one. I'm like, I have to have that card. There's no other card I need for Roy Campanella than this one. So,
and it's a beautiful looking 4 as I look at the card here on video. I mean, it's a 4 and it looks great. It's great centering. It's so funny. If you have to look hard for the flaws, they're not that big a deal, right?
Exactly.
And so I love that. I got to talk about the SGC tilt towards your collection. I've said multiple times, including to Peter Steinberg, the president of SGC, that if I could start over today, because I get this question a lot from people on Instagram and people, saying, hey, where do I start? Kind of the same dilemma you faced a couple of years ago without anyone really to ask. And guys will ask me, hey, I want to start in vintage. Where do I start? If I want to get graded, I got some raw cards I want to get graded. Who should I use? And my answer is always SGC. Even though I'm a well-documented PSA homer, I still think the SGC is the way to go. And it's almost like you read my book or something that I haven't written about using SGC for vintage. So do you grade your own cards sometimes? Do you buy them that way? Are you only I'm asking you a bunch of questions that I'll just let you start answering.
Okay.
Do you target SGC cards because of the cost difference, because you like the slabs? Lots of questions there. Start just talking about that.
Well, ultimately, the decision for me was all about the fact that my ultimate plan is that eventually I will have enough displays around me in one room to house my entire Hall of Famer collection once it's complete even. And so my number one criteria is what looks best on the wall. And to me, nothing beats the look for vintage like the SGC tuxedo. So,
and it matches your black displays. I mean, there's a lot of just symmetry there with the color scheme and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks really good. And to me, it's more, what I like the least is the Frankenstein collections. That would drive me absolutely bananas. And I know plenty of guys that have them and they love them. Great. They have SGCs, they have PSAs, they have BVGs, the occasional, HGA slab or something goofy. Great. It just bothers me. At least you're consistent, and I'm proud of you. Pretty much you have a few PSA cards though, don't you?
I have no PSA cards that are part of my permanent collection at this point.
Nice. Okay.
The only ones I have sitting around on the desk are intended now for future VR giveaways.
Nice. Maybe I'll
And
enter some of those. I got to enter some of those to get some more slabs.
the one card I have that's on my wall that was PSA, I crossed to SGC. So, and that's because it was a gift. Vintage Sanctuary. Adam gave me my, I don't know if you can see it behind me, the 60 Tops Ernie Banks card right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a PSA 4 and it crossed over to an SGC 5.
Nice. That's a win. Do you?
Not that I care.
Right. But. Not that you care, but what's so, again, you're coming in new, you're watching all these people talk about vintage, and everybody, has an opinion about it, on what they like, what they consider important when looking and assessing a vintage card. You mentioned Adam. He and I think differently about what cards we want in our collection. Neither one of us are wrong. It's just we're different. So what's important to you? Is it centering? Is it registration? Is it corners? Is it what matters to you the most?
I would say the only factor that matters to me at all is that the picture is still nicely visible.
Okay.
And I could care less if the edges, the corners, even OC miscut. I mean, this guy right here is a classic. This 1956 Ted Williams that is to the point of really being like miscut with the top bottom there. And the only thing driving that to a 2.5 grade is the OC miscutness of it.
Right.
And otherwise, it is just so crisp and vibrant with the picture and just gorgeous. And there's no way I could have afforded this card looking this good if it was cut right. So
I love it. There's a card home for every card, if that makes sense. And there are plenty of collectors that I know out there that would never even consider buying that card. And I think they're the worse for it. I think you're right. I mean, first of all, it came out of the pack that way. It's not
exactly.
like somebody cut it that way. It was screwed up from birth, right? And so don't blame the card because somebody couldn't cut it right. I guess is kind of how I look at it. I love that card found a home with you. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. I mean, speaking of even the card was cut that way, I have no concern if it is authentic min size. To me, that is an opportunity for a bargain on something that probably looks pretty darn nice.
Okay.
I mean, I've got the example up here of 33 Gaudy Carl Hubble.
Yeah.
I mean, this one is probably a 3 to 4 if it's full size.
Okay.
And that would probably cost at least twice as much as the $108 I went for at auction. So
I love it. Again, there's guys that would just sneer or put their noses up at cards like that, and I'm glad you don't, I guess is what I'm saying, because you're looking for the bargain. Now you have a real authentic 33 Gaudy Carl Hubble.
Exactly. And mine has the high lay kick and the golden background just like anyone else's does.
Yep, it does.
It just happens to have a little less white border on one side.
Yep. I love it. So you went to the National this year. Oh, no, you didn't. You're going next year. You're going next year.
Yes, next year. We're actually, my group has already booked a Airbnb for next year.
Nice. Are you excited about the endeavor of going to the world's largest card show?
I have already set a countdown timer on my phone. So,
You know what? We are kindred spirits because I too have a countdown. I've had one for Chicago and I already have it for Cleveland. We're at 11 months, 0 days, 15 hours, 2 seconds, 1 second. So mine's going right now on my phone. Every day it reminds me, oh, you're 1 day closer to Cleveland, which is kind of crazy. When we just finished the show, did you watch a lot of content from people putting out at the show?
I did. If you watch the first video I made for my new channel, which is a collaboration that I should probably plug here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm part of a new collective effort between myself, Theo Clemente Collector, James Elite Hunters, who also recently appeared on your channel, and then Caesar Pepino Man. And the four of us are together as 4 collectors, the number 4 collectors. And our tag is actually at 4 collectors with the number 4 collectors, FOR, in the second half. We are producing regular weekly live streams on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern start times, and regular video content that comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. So speaking of which, my first video was doing a recap of the month of July, and I had to watch a lot of videos to create what I created in that video. I won't spoil it for Mike. He hasn't watched it yet. But yeah, so there was a lot of videos. After a while, I did feel a little bit down of not being there, especially seeing the videos of the YouTube gatherings. But you know, I'm super excited about next year.
Yeah, and you have a year to kind of save up and think about cards you want to get, and I'm excited. It's fun to see people at their first national and what the experience is like. It's the same for all. We all walk in every year, no matter how many you've been to, and you're just like, holy cow, this is a big space. There's a lot of cards here. You know, we all feel it. I think it's just on a different level when it's your first one. You could ask Adam, you can ask other, everybody will tell you how overwhelmed they were and like, where do I even start and all that. But you'll have a lot of guys with some, good experience, national experience to help you through the process.
Oh yeah, half of our group went this year, so we're trying to get the other half to go as well next year. So
that's awesome. Well, anything else? I'd love you to talk a little bit more, maybe from an encouragement to people that think, man, I can't get into vintage because it's all too expensive or it's too hard to find or whatever excuse they want to throw out there. How would you encourage somebody that's thinking about getting into vintage and wanting to get started there?
I would say if you're concerned at all about budget, don't follow what you're seeing from guys like on the other screen over here.
Yeah.
Because he's been at it so long, he was able to buy a lot of his stuff for not a lot of money. But if you there are so many cool cards that aren't rookies. You don't have to buy rookie cards. You see it so much that people put out rookie card videos. I mean, my most popular video ended up being where I did talk about that I don't collect rookie cards. I think because rookie cards was in the title, it ended up getting the most views.
Right.
So, there's just so many cool looking cards out there. And, you look at the display behind me and do I look crappy because I don't have rookie cards back there, or
not at all?
Does it still look awesome? I mean, there's so many beautiful cards that have been made. And I mean, when I actually first started into vintage, I was biased towards photos, and because I know you're going to hate me saying this. I never really liked Diamond Kings. So I was actually
cutting you off. You're done. We're done with this interview.
Yeah. I was kind of turned off at first by the art cards and the ones that are art, and I was, mostly going for photos. Hence the love of the 53 Bowman, the ultimate vintage photo set. And but now that I'm getting into these pre-war things, and there is such a price gap between generally the sets that have photos and don't. Like one of the things I've been diving in a lot is the 1920s, and the difference in price between a 1920s strip card and like the American Carmel sets with photos is dramatic.
Yeah.
So, one of my biggest ever purchase to date, which still didn't earn me one of those eBay things, was this 1919 to 21 Walter Johnson. Got so many W's in my head right now. W514 strip card with this gorgeous pink background. I've just developed an appreciation for these now that I've got them in hand. Like the 33 Gaudi one I recently showed there.
Does Walter have some like rouge or blush on the face?
It does look a bit like he's got some makeup there. The artistry, on this level of card is probably something Scott Reindeer Studios could replicate fairly quickly.
Right.
But it's still cool.
Yes.
But
totally cool. I too am kind of, my previous episode last week was with Andy, and we talked about pre-war, and I intentionally don't talk about pre-war here because it's something that I'm learning as well. It's not something I knew a whole lot about. I can tell you what sets they are and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of really diving deep, I'm on that journey as well, and I love it. I'm enjoying it very, very much.
Oh yeah, I've dove in head first in that arena, and I have buddied up a little bit to Mr. Mangini for information. So
that is the cool part. You can always find somebody that knows more than you, which is key to learning something. And there's plenty of guys out there that are happy to share knowledge, happy to share history of the set, and it just makes it even more enjoyable to collect it once you know more about it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun is then researching about the sets, and then even diving in more to the players. There are some crazy facts out there of things that happen to players. Things maybe I shouldn't share this, but I picked up this
what's that, 39 play ball?
39 play ball Lefty Gomez.
Yeah.
And in my research of learning more about Lefty Gomez, I learned about the fact that when he was first being hired, or I guess signed by the Yankees, they were concerned that he was way too skinny and needed to put on weight. And one of the pseudosciences of the era, people thought it was a good thing to pull every one of your teeth. And he had that done to him on purpose.
Wow. I never knew that.
Like, it was supposed to remove the toxins from his body, because a lot of people had bad dental health,
right? And
so they would have teeth aches and things like that. So that became this pseudoscience thing of yanking everyone's teeth out, all their teeth out, to cure them. And he stayed pretty skinny throughout his career anyways, but I think he did all right.
He did.
Also, fun fact on that same subject is the same thing happened to Lou Gehrig early in his being diagnosed with some form of disease they couldn't figure out. So,
The yanks his teeth out, huh?
yep.
Jeez. Well, on that note,
Yeah. Sorry.
we'll tie a bow on this one. And John, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, you can again check out John on his YouTube channel, 3D 80s Kids, or you can check out the new channel, 4 Collectors, number 4 Collectors. It's a great group of guys that are part of that. I'm excited to maybe you'll ask me to be on there every once in a while, because I'm a collector and it's 4 Collectors. So, hey.
Yeah, we'll be asking all kinds of people to come on with, doing a weekly live stream, doing pre-recorded content that's also collaborations. There'll be plenty of opportunities for a lot of people. So,
Well, awesome, John. Thanks for being on the show. You made a great debut. Good job.
thank you.
You did awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a great week. And hey, whether you're buying rookie cards, whether you're buying cool other cards, non-rookies, keep collecting.